In this video, I will play you a phone recording, a conversation from November 20, 1964, between President Lyndon Johnson and his Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara. This conversation I'll play is about 1 minute in length. It was part of a longer conversation on a variety of topics. You will hear President Johnson ask McNamara about the missing T-28s, and McNamara responds by explaining 2 T-28s were shot down over Laos. McNamara described, as you will hear, the military participants as stupid damn fools and explains to Johnson the story we are putting out regarding the accident, meaning to explain it away. And neither Johnson nor McNamara mentioned the pilots, their fate, whether missing or alive, or any other detail. And frankly, I think that's telling. Not even a mention about the pilot's condition. I wanted to learn more about this event, who the pilots were who perished, what mission they were flying, and what happened to them. There is no record today that I could find in newspaper reports or even in declassified Air Force reports of the ultimate fate of these 2 missing U.S. T-28s. Oddly enough, only through aircraft archaeology reports and some written detail by former longtime Air America pilot Dick Casterland in his monumental Air America chronology could I find missing information to tie all this together. First, to fully understand the context of this event, I'll briefly explain how U.S. air operations changed in 1964 with a surge of operations over Laos. Second, I'll mention a U.S. fighter that was shot down a day earlier in Laos, the 18th, which created a news event in the U.S. because the U.S. was not supposed to be at war. Initially, I thought it may have been this incident that Johnson and McNamara were talking about, as I could not find any info on the T-28 shootdowns. Third, I'll play the recording, and finally I want to honor the 4 U.S. Air Force pilots who were shot down by providing you their names and pictures, because to date, I don't think anyone has connected the dots on these events. It actually took a bit of investigation to tie this together. In 1964, U.S. air operations surged over Laos, and why that happened is reflected in the changing war dynamic from Washington's view. A pattern of decision-making took form that would have profound influence on America's 1965 decisions for war. From the beginning of the year to the end, the Joint Chiefs peppered McNamara and Johnson with proposals for drastic escalation, warning that it was impossible to defeat insurgents operating from sanctuaries. They complained of self-imposed restrictions on U.S. South Vietnamese operations and pressed for permission to launch air and ground attacks against NLF sanctuaries in North Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In describing certain of the events which have taken place in South Vietnam and North Vietnam during the past 24 hours, I'll refer to this map which stands in front of us. On it we have shown the relative positions of China, Laos, North Vietnam, South Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and the South China Sea.
So, Royal Lao Air Force T-28 bombing operations increased significantly in 1964 to include targeting North Vietnamese forces in eastern Laos near Nape and Mugia passes.
For example, during just 1 week-long series of sorties in May 1966, U.S. B-52s unloaded 300 tons of high explosives on this pass. And from October 1970 through the summer of 1971, there was round-the-clock B-52 bombing of the Mugia and other passes, with 22,000 tons of bombs pounding this pass in this area every month.
Air America participated in these fledgling operations, flying observer missions in eastern Laos, while U.S. Navy Yankee team flights provided reconnaissance planes and escorts. U.S. Air Force jets from Thailand or South Vietnam were under new, less restrictive rules of engagement and flew in support of SAR operations or air defense requirements. The increasing intensity of Lao air operations was made evident when Navy Lieutenant Charles Klusman had been shot down by Pathet Lao 37mm anti-aircraft fire, AAA, over the Plain of Jars back on June 6, 1964, flying an RF-8A Crusader aircraft from the USS Kitty Hawk on a U.S. Navy Yankee Station photo reconnaissance mission. It was the second time AAA fire had hit Klusman's plane, the first time he was able to hobble his bird back to the Kitty Hawk. This time, the botched search and rescue, or SAR, effort convinced U.S. officials that enhanced air coordination over Laos was required as the area was becoming very hot and very fast. On November 18, McNamara reported that an F-100 was shot down over Laos, as it was one of two F-100s escorting a photo reconnaissance RF-101, and he was quick to add that such flights were done with the concurrence of the Royal Lao government. Even though this wasn't the first plane lost over Laos, this was big news. Just 2 weeks earlier, Lyndon Johnson had been elected president, campaigning on a promise to avoid escalating the war in Vietnam, unlike, he claimed, his bellicose opponent, Barry Goldwater. On the 19th, the day after the shootdown, the North Vietnamese rebutted the U.S. claim, per the New York Times, saying the plane had not been shot down in Laos, but over North Vietnam, and they had shot two other U.S. planes down. None of this was true. Actually, one F-100 pilot, call sign Ball 3, escorting a Yankee team reconnaissance plane, was splashed by AAA ground fire near the border town of Bon Sampan in Lao Military Region 3. This became the largest U.S. SAR in Laos to date, with Air America T-28Ds, U.S. Navy Sandys, AD-4s, from the fleet, U.S. Air Force aircraft from Korat, and, marking their first sortie into Laos from Nakhon Phanom, two HH-43s, escorted by Navy pilots, Pansy 89 and 88. The next day, an Air America H-34 crew, pilots Ed Riley and Bobby Nunez, with a flight mechanic, found and retrieved the pilot. It appeared the pilot, Captain William Reynolds Martin, had ejected just prior to impact. His chute had deployed, but failed to fully open. And now, the phone conversation.
Sorry to take your trouble. I just wanted to let you know how we're getting along.
What about these planes that are missing?
Oh, the stupid damn fools. They took two T-28s from Udon, Thailand, put two pilots in each one of them, tried to fly over to South Vietnam to pick up two more T-28s to fly back to Thailand, and flew over Laos in the process and got shot down. And no excuse for anything like that. It isn't going to cause us very much trouble, I think, because the story we're putting out is that these were regular ferry flights of T-28s from South Vietnam to Thailand, supplied under our military assistance program, and we have a perfect right to do that. And it's just part of the normal military assistance to Thailand for use in Thailand. But it was a very, very serious mistake of judgment on the pilot's part, or whoever sent them out to use this particular route.
I'm asking you.
I'll unravel the story now. While Reed and Nunez were recovering Captain Martin, two T-28s with 4 air commandos on board disappeared over Laos. This was not the first time American pilots had suffered losses flying the T-28 in Southeast Asia. Soon after the machine's arrival and activation in the Laos theater, structural failure caused 2 T-28s to shed wings, during dive bombing runs in South Vietnam. Secured to the fuselage by only 4 bolts, the wings had to be stoutly reinforced. The 2 T-28 crews, 2 pilots in each aircraft, departed Udon Royal Thai Air Force Base on a flight to Saigon. The increasing need for T-28s was the purpose of the mission, with 2 of the pilots to ferry T-28s back to Udon. En route, radar contact was lost at 14:30 hours on the 19th at 4,000 feet and 22 miles northwest of Chapon. Air America pilot Dick Casterlin wrote that, "Unless some intelligence gathering hanky-panky was going on, I could not understand what they were doing in that area at a low altitude." An extensive SAR was launched with no success. On the 24th, 2 sorties of 2 RF-101Cs photographed the T-28's proposed flight path, but with no luck. On 27 November, this article appeared in the European edition of Stars and Stripes. 2 planes, 4 officers missing over Thailand. An article I didn't find until I finished my research. The article named the pilots, and note that it says over Thailand, not Laos. Several weeks later, the T-28s were discovered near Da Nang on the west side of a tall mountain. The pilots had been flying too low, some speculated. However, others believed that the planes were shot down at the location by gunfire from above. Here is the information on the 4 pilots shot down, officially from AAA Fire on 19 November 1964. Veteran Air America pilots Reed and Nunez deserve much credit as well for their extraordinary heroics during the war rescuing pilots. Shot down, ambushed, crashed aircraft, and other calamities did not stop their efforts to rescue downed pilots, and both were prior service Air Force and deserve recognition. Thank you for watching and giving remembrance to these men. Please subscribe to my channel and watch other videos.